In today's equity index futures markets, let's take a look at the NASDAQ 100 futures as they're realizing a second day of strength. We're seeing yesterday's big move higher followed up by further strength today, and the NASDAQ futures up about 0.5% currently and retaking the 16,000 level. 16,060 is the current level in the futures market, and I think when you look at some of the reasons why we're maintaining this upward trajectory, a lot has to do with the storyline surrounding the Omicron variant and COVID as a whole. And we continue to, I guess, identify or digest the storylines surrounding the variant and the potential economic impact. And it appears, at least to this point, for a second day in a row, the markets are starting to discount a little bit the potential economic impact of this Omicron variant if the severity continues to show signs that it's not as severe as the previous two iterations. Certainly the jury's still out there, but nonetheless, I do think that the market's starting to sense there's a potential that if it is not as severe, that it will not have quite the economic impact that some of the other variants have had over the last couple of years, and therefore I think the markets are anticipating the possibility that we can maintain this growth pattern that we're currently finding really across many different parts of the economic activity, not only here in the United States, but from a global perspective as well. And I think also when you look at the other dynamics here, really overall the data this week has been pretty good. And even though the Fed has initiated the potential for reining in liquidity provisions, the market's digesting that as well. And we're not seeing too of an outsized move in the bond market. We're maintaining the range that we've been in for the last couple of months. So I think that's adding to the foundation here for the equity markets, at least for the short term, and that's why I think we'll continue to build on the strength from yesterday. Now, looking at the general trends in place, I want to point out that we're seeing all the four major equity index futures markets higher on the session, and all up about the same today. There's not a big dispersion between return profiles. We're seeing them all up about 0.5% here today so far in the session. And I also want to point out the other dynamic that's very interesting as we move towards the end of the year is when you look at the S&P 500 future, we're basically about 0.2% away from new all-time highs. So we're creeping back up towards those all-time highs that the market just reached a couple weeks ago. Now, when you look at the NASDAQ futures, we're still about 3% away from all-time highs. So when you look at the return profile here in the recent price action, you're looking at the NASDAQ futures under a little bit more pressure than the S&P 500 futures as we move through the month of December.